Welcome to HCK. My name is Mbuvi J, and this is your favorite program, Knowledge Quest. Now today we are learning, of course, hypertext markup language, proceeding from where we left. As you can remember, we said that hypertext markup language is the language behind every other website out there. So anytime you are visiting any website, be it maybe a school website, a church website, a government website, the language behind the scenes is usually hypertext markup language as the core language. Although there are other languages, like we have a cascading style sheet for styling, we have JavaScript for making the website interactive, we have PHP behind the scenes for backend side, or Python, and MySQL on the other far end. Just to remind you, the whole journey we talked about on the front end, we have hypertext markup language, we have cascading style sheets, we have JavaScript, then we have bootstrap that wraps all this. Of course, this is what we are calling the front end languages. Then behind the scenes, or in the server side, we have PHP or Python, and then the database language, of course, is MySQL. So that is the end journey of exactly what we need to be able to create a fully responsive website or a web application. So we just started with HTML, and we said, of course, we'll learn the hypertext markup language syntax first before we introduce ourselves to cascading style sheets, and then before we go to JavaScript to make our website a bit more interactive, and then we wrap it up with the bootstrap. At that point, we'll be now saying that we are good in front end. From there now, it is expected that we'll go to PHP or Python, and then this will pull data and save the data to MySQL, either to or fetch the data from MySQL back to the users. So just to show you the journey, so on one side here we have mobile phones or the handsets. We have the computers or the desktops. We have laptops. We have the devices that users use to access the website. But on the other side, we have the database where the data is expected to be stored. So in between here, we are talking about the server side. So we have the languages that reside here. This is where we find HTML. This is where we find CSS. This is where we find Bootstrap and JavaScript. But on the other side here, we have now the MySQL. In between here, there's now PHP that is responsible for fetching data or pulling data from the database or to the database. So that is the journey. So just to remind you of what we did lastly, the first thing that we need to do is to create a project based on our work. We create the project based on our work, and usually it is a folder that we will put all the files that are necessary in creating the website. Like for example, we are creating a website for a school, or maybe a website for a church, or maybe a website for a certain organization. Depending on the name of the organization, then the first thing that is expected from us is to create a folder. So you go somewhere in the desktop on your machine, you create a new folder, you give that folder a name. Like for example, we can call it Junior Stars. Just a random name, Junior Stars Academy. Then from there, that will become like the basis of all the other files we are going to create. Remember, our website is a collection of several files put together to be accessed through a browser. Like for example, you can have a file like a text file, you can have an image, a video, bring them together to collectively create the website. So from there, the other thing we said, we need tools for the work. So we said we have so many other tools out there that we will be able to take advantage of. There are tools that we can always take advantage of. We have Sublime Text, we have Visual Studio Code, we have Atom, we have there are so many other tools out there, Notepad++, but we said the best tool to use out there is a tool that really understands what you are doing. A tool that in case maybe you introduce an error to your application, then it is in a position to correct you. And again, a tool that maybe can auto-save your work as you proceed. And that is why we chose to use Visual Studio Code. So if you have already installed Visual Studio Code on your machine, then you just need to open Visual Studio Code. And once you open Visual Studio Code, then the next thing that is expected is for you to click File menu, then you click Open Folder. Open Folder, then of course now it will populate all the folders in your computer. You go to your machine for this time around in the desktop here, and then we select our folder, our mother folder for our project. Of course, the new project that you are creating for this time around, maybe the Junior Stars folder. And then this is how it comes. Now, when you are there at that particular time, then it means, yes, you are now able to access all the files in your machine. Junior Stars folder is here. Make sure you are able to see that folder. Now, from there we said the next thing that you need is to create the files, the hypertext markup language files. So we have these files here. You hover the mouse on top of your folder, the name folder, the mother folder, then you'll see the icon for creating a new file, which is here. Now from there, now you click new file, and then you give the file a name. The very first file name we said is usually given the name index. Why? Because servers out there, they first look for that file called index for it to process your work. So if this index file is not available, then at some point you realize that your project will not be launched automatically by servers out there. So it is very important to make sure that your very first file is given the name index. Then now any other file can be given any other name out there. So we said that you can now create another file, call it about.html. Click once again, give it the name services.html. Click the file again, the icon again, give it the name contact.html. Contact.html. Yeah, so once you have your files with you, you can create as many files as possible. A website can have as many files as possible. You can have even gallery.html, you can have maybe our mission.html, you can have as many files as you can. Now, if you want to create a folder, then the next icon over there will be used for that purpose. New folder. So you just need to click new folder, and then you give that folder a name. Like for example, we may wish to have somewhere we will be storing images. So what is the name of the folder where we'll be storing our images? We can call it images, or we can call it img, or any relevant name like that. Number 2, we can create another folder probably where we will store styles when it comes to that. Then for this case, you just need to make sure that you are not selecting a specific folder. Make sure you are not selecting a specific folder. You click on an empty area of your view. Then from there, click again the new folder icon, and you give now your new folder a name. Like for this case, I can create a folder called CSS. So when time comes, we'll be creating our cascading style sheets applications inside the CSS folder, as well as if we are going to have some images, then we will put the images inside the img folder. Now let us get started. Of course, we said inside the index file, we said we need to create the boilerplate template, the HTML tags, and the very first tag to create, we said it is the HTML tag. When you type HTML, automatically you realize that Visual Studio Code will close it for you. Visual Studio Code will close it for you. So at this point, then you can now create the head tag, So just go ahead and create the head tag, and automatically you realize that Visual Studio Code is closing the head tag for you. So the next thing that you need inside the head is to create the title tag, So you just need to go ahead. You can just type actually title. As you see it populate here, you just need to press enter, then automatically it will open and close the title tag for you. So inside now the title tag, what do you need? Inside the title tag, you can type the title of your website. Of course, now this is the home page. That is the home page. Now, after the head here, you create the body tag, and you make sure you open and close the body tag. So this is where we are expecting to do our website. Today I wanted us now to concentrate with the contact us page. The contact us page is our page of focus today. We want to create a page where people out there can be able to reach us by giving us maybe their name, their email, their phone number, their gender, maybe the interested program, and then they agree terms and conditions. Then definitely at the end of the day, we give them a button to reset and a button to submit. So we may need such a thing. So let me create what is expected. Let me create a rough figure of what is expected of us. So this is what is expected of us. We may have something like this: contact us, something like that. Then we'll have something like this: enter your name, then a text box or an input where the users can now type their name. Then from there, enter your email, then a text box where users can enter email address. Then we can have something like this: select your gender. Then we have something like this: male, female. Then from there we can have a select where we are telling someone to select the program of their choice. So we can have select program of choice. Then we can have several items in here defining maybe the selection. Like for example, we can say PP1, PP2, grade 3, etc. Then after that, we can have a text area, maybe any other message. Then a text area, a big one, where someone can type the message. Then at the end of the day, a button for submitting and a button for resetting. At the end of the day, we need to have somewhere where the users can be able to reset or to submit. Reset, submit, and many others. This is just a sample form of what is expected of us. So there are so many things that you can put in a form. You can have even a button, you can have even an input for password. You can have an input for telephone numbers. You can have check boxes, agree terms and conditions, and many others. So let us get started. Let's get started. So as usual, we are inside the contact.html form, and as usual, I want you to create the boilerplate template, the HTML template. We said Visual Studio Code already understands that syntax. It already understands that syntax of creating the boilerplate template, the HTML, the head, the title, and the body. So you can just type exclamation mark, press enter, it will generate it for you. It will generate it for you, something like this. Alternatively, you can just type HTML and then you pick HTML5. It will still generate it for you. So once it generates, you can concentrate now on the body itself. Although at this particular point, you realize that there are other attributes that have been created on top, apart from just the normal HTML boilerplate template. So we have HTML lang attribute, which defines EN, that is English. You can see also here we have document type is HTML. That has been included as well. Then we have the meta char set. This is the character encoding, the normal encoding that supports normal characters like A, B, C, D, question marks, less than signs, greater than signs, and all that. We have now the meta viewport. Viewport means what you can see. What you can see when you visit a website, then that is what we refer as the viewport. Content width device. Content width device width. This means the device that the user is using to view our website should dictate the width of the website. Like for example, if a user is using a phone, then we expect the website to fit there. If a viewer is using a tablet, we expect our website to fit there. If the viewer is using a desktop or a laptop or a device with a greater screen, then we expect our website to fit there. Then we have initial scale 1. What does this mean? This means that the default zooming level of the website to be 1. Okay, so that was just that. Let's just concentrate now with today's activity. We are talking about the contact page, so we can have the title to be a bit relevant with what we are doing. So contact us page here. Then now let us get started. Let us get started. The first attribute, the first object, that you need here is the form tag. So you just need to come here in the body and define your form tag. So the form tag, the moment you type form tag, it may or may not come with the action part. So this is very important, especially when it comes to processing the content of our form, and that will come later when we introduce ourselves to PHP. But for now, you can ignore the action part. There are also many other attributes that we may include as time goes, like method and all that. Now, in between the two form opening and closing tag, that is here, that is where we are going to create our form page attributes and inputs. So the first thing that we may need here is to draw the outline, this one, to draw the outline. So for you to draw the outline, then we need a tag called field set. You need a tag called field set. Automatically that has been drawn for you. So inside the field set, then we need to create a legend. So you just need to come here and type a legend, and then you type the title of your website. This is contact us. So you can go ahead and type contact us. Up to that particular time, you can now preview what you have done, either by right clicking, going to open with the live server, and then definitely you expect to see a preview of what you have done, and this is it. So inside the legend, we are now going to create, inside the legend, after the legend, inside the field set, we are now going to create our inputs right in there. But for now, if you did not install the live server, then go to your application. On the left side here we have extensions. Search for live server and then install the live server. It will give you that option of just right clicking your work and selecting to open with the live server. The other thing you can do is to go down here, you minimize everything, visit your website, confirm if you can see the folders and the files, then open your file. You'll be able to see that you have created a field set with a legend, contact us, and all those are inside. They are inside the form tag. So now the next thing that we are going to do shortly after the break is to now create the relevant inputs. The first input here being enter your name, enter your email, select your gender, select the program of choice, any other message, any other relevant message, and then the button for resetting and the button for submit. So see you after the break. Make sure as you come back you already have what we have created. Thank you so much. Welcome back. I think we can proceed where we left. So we talked about, in case you had not installed the extension for live server, then you need to do that. You make sure you go to the extensions icon, you search for live server, then make sure you install it so that at least it can be helping you to access what you have created. Now the other thing that you also need to make sure it is set is what we call the auto saving feature that comes in handy in Visual Studio Code, and this is the feature that I'm talking about, the auto save. Make sure that checkbox is selected so that in case you forget to be saving your work, then definitely Visual Studio Code can be saving it for you. Now let's proceed. We are inside the legend, inside the field set, sorry, after the legend. So we need now here to introduce ourselves to this. So this is just a normal sentence, enter your name. So go ahead, type enter your name, enter your name, enter your name. So that's just a sentence, so that doesn't have to be in a tag anywhere. From there you can create a break tag that now introduces the next line of code in a new line of its own, and at that particular time we create an input. So this is just an input. So if you just create the input tag just that way, automatically you have created a text box where the users can be able to type something. Let's see, right click somewhere in your screen, select open with live server, and then of course the input is already created and you can see. So at this point, if you type anything here, you realize that yes, you are able to type. At the same time, if there is any attribute you want to add, then you add the attribute inside the input tag here. So an input tag can come with several things. An input tag can come with name tag, name attribute. It can come with placeholder attribute. It can come with many other tags. So for this, maybe we can just introduce the type attribute and pick the specific type attribute. There are several type attributes of an input. We need to also to understand them. There's an attribute for file, for email, for date, we have so many attributes. So for this one, we wanted it to be text because we're expecting users to type text in this input. Now, we can introduce another attribute called placeholder. Placeholder is a way of letting the user understand what is expected of them inside the attribute, like inside the input. Like for this case, we can have placeholder equals enter your name here. Enter your name here. So the moment you introduce the placeholder attribute, enter your name here, then you are expecting to get something like this. Enter your name here. And if you start typing, then you realize that that placeholder attribute has disappeared. It is giving you a chance of understanding what is expected of you here as a user. So I think that is okay. We can probably now go to another attribute, although there are many other attributes, but we just concentrate with the major attributes that you may find them necessary out there. Like for example, there's an attribute called read only. Read only. Read only is an attribute. You can give it a value if you want. So just say read only equals read only. Read only equals read only. When you do that, it means you are now locking this particular attribute. Someone cannot be able to type because of the read only attribute. So sometimes you may want to display content, but you don't want the user to see the content. So we do that. You can display the content, but you don't want the user to edit the content. Then we do that using the read only attribute. Now let's proceed to another input. So it's good you create some break tags here, at least so that for now can give us some space to introduce our next input. Enter your email address. So at this point, just another input, and you can give this input an attribute called type, whose value is email. An attribute called name you can ignore for now, we don't need that. An attribute called ID you can ignore, we don't need that for now. But later when we will be learning the server-side processing languages, then you realize that definitely we will need to use the name attribute as well as the ID attribute. So for now you can ignore that, but you can go ahead and enter the new attributes, like for example an attribute for placeholder, at least so that the users can understand what is expected of them. There's something that I want you to realize. Enter email address. So I want you to realize why I needed the title on top here, at least so that if you're not using the placeholder attribute, at least you need to tell people what is expected of them. Sometimes you may choose to use both the title and the placeholder, or you can decide to use just one. Like for example, Facebook doesn't create the titles. It only tells you to enter the values using the placeholder attribute. So but for us, we can follow this procedure of telling the people what is expected of them in a title. So for now here we can just say enter your email address. So we are asking the users to enter their email address. Then now we are giving them an input where they can enter the email address. So anytime you do any change, it is advisable that you keep on previewing what you are doing, so that in case of an error, then you can correct it in real time. So after that, we can get to the next thing. Remember, we are inside the field set. So after the input for email, the next thing that we can do is to let users now tell us their gender through a radio button. So at this particular point, we can create a break tag, and then we let the user to pick their gender. So you can tell them select your gender, or maybe your gender, something like that. Now at that point, now we can have a break tag, and then we create two radio buttons. So how do we create a radio button? Input type equals radio. So just a normal input, but the attribute here is radio. The value is radio. When you do that, you realize that you have created a Kasako, a radio button, automatically. So if you preview what you have done, you realize that yes, you have a radio button that you have introduced over there. Now people so far, they are not able to see that what is expected of them on the radio button. So you can type some message here like mail, and then a break tag. From there you create another input, and this new input, now you give it the same value on the type attribute, which is radio. So when you do that, you realize that yes, you have created another radio button, but we don't have caption of what is expected of them at that particular moment. So again, you can now give it the female caption. Now people are able to see that yes, against the first radio button there is the word male, against the second radio button there is the word female. Now when you do that, up to this particular moment, you realize that users are able to select both male and female at the same time, which is not supposed to be the case. So now to avoid such a scenario, then you need to give your two radio buttons the same name attribute. Yeah, you come here, you create a little space, and then make sure you are still inside the input. You create a name attribute, name equals, then you can say name equals gender. And then you come to the second radio button, you create the same name attribute and feed it with the same value. So name is equals gender, name equals gender on each of the radio buttons. So if you now check, you realize that automatically you are not able now to pick both genders at the same time, because they are sharing the same name attribute. Okay, so we can now proceed to the next thing. Of course, we can introduce our two breaks so that we can have some big space to introduce our next item, which was select the program of choice. So that is created using a select tag. So we can tell the user something like select program of choice, and then we create a break tag before we introduce users to a select tag. So how is a select tag created? It's simple. You just need to use the tag select, and then inside the select tag, you create the different options that you may want the users to be able to pick. Like for this case, I can now start with the first option PP1, primary one. Another option leave alone the value attribute. We may not need this for now. You can choose to ignore, or you leave it, or you have it with you. The most important thing is the item that you are typing in between the two options, because that is what the user will see. The users will not see the value part. So PP1, PP2, and any other option that you want the viewers to see, you only put it inside an option tag. Make sure that your option tags are in between the select tag. So you can have any other option that you want. You can list as many options as possible. Now when you go back to preview what you've done, you realize that yes, we have given users an option of selecting an option from a number of other options through a select tag. So it's an option, options that are listed in between the select tag. But it's very important to have a title on top there, because now here we cannot put the placeholder attribute. Now from there we can have some break tags. And then introduce ourselves now to any other message, a big text area where now users can type a paragraph, or they can type a big message or something like that. So what do we need? For this case now, we need a text area attribute. We need the text area attribute. Text area attribute. With the text area attribute, with the text area object, we can now put the attribute inside. The text area tag, you create some space and introduce the columns attribute. You can have like as many columns as you want. Probably we can say like we can start with maybe 30 columns, and then we can define the number of rows that we want to use. So rows, how many rows of this text area? Then we can say like, let's say 10 rows. Let's look at what that gives us. Then now from there we can be able to adjust item by item as we go ahead. So this is what we have gotten. Yeah, but so far we don't have a title, so we need to introduce the title, any other message before the text area itself. So it's very important to know how to navigate. This is our text area. This is our text area. This is our text area. So we need at this point somewhere here to tell people the caption that we want, which is any other message. Any other message followed by a break tag, something like that. Any other message, break tag, then the text area with the relevant number of columns and the relevant number of rows. Then at this particular point you can now preview your work and realize, yes, you have created a text area where people now are able to type what message they would like to have in here. So that was that. There are so many other inputs. Like for example, if you wanted now to ask users to enter their password, then you'll still do that using an input. Yeah, like for this case, before we introduce ourselves to reset and the submit button, we can still tell people maybe to enter their password. So it's a matter of just coming here, telling people enter password, enter password, and then at this particular point maybe you create a break, and then you create an input whose type is password. You create an input whose type is password. When you do that, you realize that automatically the browsers will want to hide the characters as you type. I think I forgot to create a break tag here. Let me just introduce a break tag immediately after the text area, so that my new caption for password can be in its own line. Something like this. Yeah, after the text area I have created a break tag so that my new password, my new object for password can be in its own line. But the most important thing is you realize that here, as you type the password, the characters automatically get hidden. Why? Because of the attribute for the input called type, whose value is password. The attribute for the input tag called type, whose value is password. Very, very, very important. If you wanted, you can now go ahead and introduce other attributes like the placeholder attribute. Give it the value enter password here, enter password here. Then that creates for you a provision for being able to enter the password. So that again, you can be able to see that users out there are able to understand what is expected of them at this particular moment. Now before again we set the reset and the submit button, we can have a checkbox telling people agree terms and conditions. Agree terms and conditions before maybe they proceed. So at this particular point, we can come here and create a break tag, either 1 or 2, then tell the users to agree terms and conditions after a checkbox. So input type equals checkbox. Input type equals checkbox. That introduces a checkbox for you. So you can come outside here, because so far what you have done, the moment you said input type equals checkbox, what you have done, you have created a checkbox where users are expecting to check or to select before they proceed, something like this. So it's very important for you to type some caption so that they can understand what is expected of them. So at this particular time, we can come here and or just immediately after the checkbox, we can have a message like agree terms and conditions. Agree terms and conditions, something like that. Agree terms and conditions, something like that. Then after that, now we can now have our break tags. Then we introduce our reset and our submit buttons, because at the end of the day, once a user fills the form, they expected to click the submit button, and then of course it is PHP or a server-side processing language that is expected to fetch that data and submit that data to a remote database somewhere. So for this case, let's proceed. It's just a normal input, but the type is reset. When you do that, you realize that that creates a button for you that when you click, it will reset the whole content or whatever thing the user had typed there. Automatically it is set to empty. So let's see whether that is true. We can type some message here. Let me say enter your name J, enter your email address j@gmail.com, select your gender male, then select the program of choice EP.2, any other message, thank you for the opportunity. Then from there, enter password, agree terms and condition. The moment you click reset, then you see the whole content has been cleared, and that is automated as long as you have created the reset button inside the input. So from there now, our last button is the button for submitting. So what we need is another input, but this time around submit is the attribute for the button. So input type equals submit. When you do that, automatically you are getting the button for submitting, which is here. So this for now it's not working because we don't have PHP or a server-side processing language connected to this form to fetch this data to submit to the database. But so far the button is there. If you wanted to customize the name of your button or what the users will be able to see, then you can add an attribute called value. Then you can now type the message that you want with whatever language that you want. Submit data or something like that. When you preview what you've done, you realize that yes, you have customized the message to the word submit data. So submit data is our own custom value attribute for the submit button, for the input type whose type is submit. So the other thing is now about the attributes. You can always now play around with the attributes, but generally that is how the form inputs are created. There are so many attributes, you can always play around with them, like the pattern attribute for the password, where you dictate the users how they should be able to enter their passwords. You just need to come in the password part of it, introduce the attribute called the pattern somewhere here inside the input type for password. You just say pattern equals. That's an attribute that will be able to dictate what pattern of the password you're expecting. Like for example, if you're expecting people to type alphabets only, either in capital letters or in small letters from A to Z and just 3 of them, then this is what you are going to do. Just need to define straight brackets, then a hyphen z, then from there small a hyphen small z, then from there outside the straight bracket you define now a curly bracket and say 3. What does that mean? This means that you are giving your viewers or your users permission to type the password in capital letters, alphabet A to Z or A to Z small, but just 3 characters. So let's test as we wind up. If, for example, that is the case, you realize that the moment you type a different pattern as your password and click the submit button, you realize that automatically you will get this kind of message that please match the requested format. Why? Because you didn't follow the pattern expected. So it is always good now to create a placeholder here telling people what type of password they should be typing. Then if you type the correct thing, then you click submit, then you don't expect an error. So there are so many attributes there of different inputs, so you can do your research, but at least we have covered the major things. So thank you for watching. See you in the next class. Thank you.